Part 1. The invisible force that holds you back. Most people believe their biggest enemy is the world outside. Other people, lack of opportunities, bad luck, unfair circumstances. But the most powerful force keeping you small does not live outside of you. It lives inside your mind. Your mind is not designed to make you successful. It is designed to keep you safe. And safety often looks like limitation. Part 2. Why your mind prefers comfort over growth. Your brain evolved to protect you from danger. Thousands of years ago, danger meant death. Today, danger means rejection, failure, embarrassment, uncertainty. Your mind reacts to these modern threats the same way it reacted to predators. It says, don't risk it. Stay where you are. Don't stand out. Growth feels unsafe because it is unfamiliar, and unfamiliarity is interpreted as danger. Part 3. The illusion of safety that shrinks your life. Staying small feels safe, doing what is expected, avoiding attention, lowering your ambitions. But this safety is an illusion, because while you avoid short-term discomfort, you create long-term regret. Your world slowly shrinks. You stop dreaming freely. You stop expressing yourself honestly. You stop believing in your own potential. Comfort becomes a cage. Part 4. How fear disguises itself as logic. Your mind rarely says, I am afraid. Instead, it sounds logical. It's not the right time. I need to be more prepared. People like me don't succeed. I should be realistic. Fear becomes intellectual. And because it sounds reasonable, you trust it. But logic used to avoid growth is still fear, just well-dressed fear. Part 5. Why your mind reminds you of past failures. Whenever you try to expand, your mind brings up memories, times you failed, moments you were rejected, situations where you felt small. This is not cruelty. This is protection. Your mind is saying, remember what happened last time? It believes pain repetition is worse than unrealized potential, so it anchors you to the past to prevent future risk. Part 6. The comfort zone is not comfortable forever. At first, staying small feels peaceful. No pressure, no expectations, no risk. But over time, this peace turns into dissatisfaction. You feel restless, disconnected, unfulfilled. Because the human spirit is not designed for stagnation. When growth is suppressed, meaning disappears. Part 7. Why you feel tired even when you do nothing. Mental exhaustion does not always come from effort. It often comes from resistance. Resisting who you could become. Resisting change. Resisting responsibility. Your mind works overtime maintaining limitations. That constant internal negotiation drains energy. Living small is exhausting. Part 8. The voice that tells you to wait. One of the most dangerous thoughts is, I'll start later. Later feels safe. Later feels flexible. Later feels harmless. But later rarely comes. Waiting becomes a habit, and habits become identity. Your mind keeps you small by convincing you there is always more time. Part 9. Why your mind fears your own potential. Potential is responsibility. If you admit you are capable, you can no longer hide behind excuses. Your mind fears that moment, because potential demands action, and action demands accountability. Staying small allows you to say, I could have, but, and that sentence protects the ego while destroying the soul. Part 10. The cost of never challenging your limits. When you never challenge yourself, your limits become permanent. Confidence erodes, self-trust weakens, identity shrinks. You stop asking, what if, and start accepting, this is just how I am. That belief is the final prison. Part 11. How the ego uses protection to limit expansion. Your ego believes its job is to preserve your identity, not to evolve it, not to expand it, but to keep it intact. Any action that threatens who you think you are feels dangerous. Growth requires identity death. Old beliefs must collapse. Old habits must be questioned. Old narratives must be rewritten. The ego resists this, so it whispers, "This isn't you. You're not that kind of person." People will notice the change. And to avoid internal conflict, you stay the same. Small, predictable, safe. Part 12. Why your mind connects visibility with danger. Being seen has always carried risk. In early human history, visibility meant vulnerability. Standing out meant becoming a target. That ancient wiring still exists. Today, visibility means expressing opinions, trying something new, being judged. Your mind reacts as if exposure equals threat, so it pulls you back into invisibility. You stay quiet. You avoid leadership. You hide your ambition. Not because you lack ability, but because your mind equates visibility with emotional danger. Part 13. The internal contract you never realized you signed. At some point in your life, you made an internal agreement, maybe unconsciously. If I don't expect much, I won't be disappointed. If I don't try fully, failure won't hurt. This contract feels protective, but it comes at a cost. You trade potential for predictability, dreams for safety, expansion for control. Breaking this contract is one of the hardest inner decisions, because it means accepting that disappointment is part of growth. Part 14. Why your mind prefers known pain over unknown possibility. Familiar pain feels manageable. You know how it feels. You know how to survive it. Unknown possibility feels chaotic. It could be better, but it could also be worse. Your mind chooses certainty over opportunity, even if certainty is painful. That is why people remain in unfulfilling jobs, toxic relationships, and limiting routines. The mind chooses what it understands, not what would free it. Part 15. How self-doubt becomes a safety mechanism. Self-doubt is often mistaken for lack of confidence, but in many cases it is a defense. If you doubt yourself, you never fully commit. If you never fully commit, you never fully risk. And if you never fully risk, you never fully fail. Self-doubt becomes a shield. But shields block growth as much as they block pain. Part 16. The role of social conditioning in keeping you small. From a young age, you are taught to fit in. Don't be too loud. Don't be too ambitious. Don't challenge authority. Approval becomes survival. Your mind learns. Belonging is safer than becoming. So when your true self pushes for expansion, your conditioning pushes back. Fear of rejection overpowers desire for expression. Part 17. Why your mind confuses peace with avoidance. Avoidance feels peaceful. No conflict, no confrontation, no discomfort. But peace without honesty is not peace. It is suppression. Your mind convinces you that avoiding growth is emotional maturity, but suppressed potential always returns as restlessness. Part 18. The slow erosion of self-trust. Each time you silence your desire, each time you ignore your inner pull, your mind learns a lesson. My voice does not matter. Over time, self-trust erodes. You stop listening to intuition. You doubt your instincts. You defer decisions. Living small becomes automatic, and automatic behavior is the hardest to break. Part 19. Why you feel a strange sadness without a clear reason. This sadness is not depression. It is grief. Grief for the life you sense is possible but are not living. Your mind tries to quiet this grief by keeping you distracted. But distraction cannot replace purpose. That sadness is a signal, not a weakness. Part 20. The moment you realize the mind is not the leader. Your mind is a tool, not a commander. It offers suggestions, not truths. When you realize this, power returns. You can acknowledge fear without obeying it. You can hear doubt without surrendering to it. Growth begins when the mind stops ruling and starts serving. Part 21. Why your mind resists change even when you are suffering. One of the strangest paradoxes of the human mind is that it can resist change even when staying the same hurts. You may feel dissatisfied, unfulfilled, restless, and still, your mind says, "At least this is familiar." Familiar suffering feels predictable. Predictable pain feels controllable. Change introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty removes the illusion of control. Your mind would rather manage pain it understands than risk a future it cannot predict. This is why awareness alone is not enough. You can clearly see what is wrong and still feel unable to move. Because the mind is not motivated by happiness. It is motivated by survival. Part 22. How your identity becomes a prison. Over time, you build an identity. I'm not confident. I'm not disciplined. I've always been like this. These statements feel honest, but they are stories, not facts. Your mind clings to identity because identity creates stability. Changing behavior threatens identity. If you act differently, you must see yourself differently. And that requires internal reorganization. So your mind resists. Not because growth is impossible, but because it destabilizes the structure you have lived inside for years. Part 23. Why your mind uses distraction to avoid expansion. When growth becomes uncomfortable, distraction appears. Scrolling, entertainment, overthinking, busyness. Distraction numbs awareness. It keeps you occupied so you don't have to face what you are avoiding. Your mind prefers noise over clarity, because clarity demands decisions, and decisions demand courage. Living small is easier when you are constantly distracted. Part 24. The fear of responsibility hides behind procrastination. Procrastination is not laziness. It is fear. Fear of responsibility. Fear of ownership. Fear of saying, "This is my life." Taking action means accepting consequences. If you try, you must accept the outcome. So your mind delays. Delay feels harmless, but delay accumulates regret, and regret reinforces the belief that you are small. Part 25. Why your mind questions you only when you try. Notice something important. Your mind is quiet when you stay within limits, but the moment you try to expand, it becomes loud. Suddenly, it has opinions, warnings, doubts. This is not coincidence. The mind does not question stagnation. It questions change. Silence during an action is not peace. It is complacency. Noise during growth is not danger. It is resistance. Part 26. How self-sabotage feels like self-protection. Self-sabotage rarely feels destructive. It feels reasonable. You quit early, you lower the goal, you avoid commitment, and you tell yourself, "It's just not the right moment." But beneath that reasoning is fear of exposure, fear of discovering your limits, fear of discovering your strength. Self-sabotage protects you from confronting who you might become. Part 27. The mind's addiction to predictability. Predictability feels safe, even when it is unfulfilling. Your routines, your reactions, your patterns, they create a sense of control. But predictability without growth slowly drains meaning from life. Your mind prefers a small, predictable world over a large, uncertain one. Breaking this addiction requires conscious disruption. Small acts of courage, repeated daily. Part 28. Why you feel intimidated by your own potential. Potential is heavy. It carries expectation. If you admit your potential, You must confront the gap between who you are and who you could be. That gap creates pressure, so your mind minimizes potential to reduce pressure. It says, don't aim too high. Be realistic. But realism without vision becomes resignation. Part 29. The moment you realize fear is not a stop sign, fear feels like a command. It says, stop, don't, go back. But fear is information, not instruction. It signals the edge of growth. When you reinterpret fear as a signal rather than a warning, your relationship with it changes. You stop obeying it blindly. Part 30. Why expansion must be gradual, not violent. Trying to force growth creates internal rebellion. Your mind pushes back harder. Expansion works best when it is gradual. Small risks, consistent action, daily discomfort. This teaches the mind that growth is survivable. And once the mind learns you won't die from expansion, it slowly releases control. Part 31. How you begin to expand without triggering self-rejection. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to change everything at once. Your mind interprets sudden transformation as a threat, so it rebels. Expansion that lasts is quiet and deliberate. It starts with small acts of self-respect. Speaking honestly when you would normally stay silent. Choosing effort when avoidance feels easier. Keeping a promise to yourself, even a small one. Each action sends a signal to your mind. I am safe, even when I grow. Over time, your nervous system adapts. Growth stops feeling like danger and starts feeling like identity. Part 32. The role of discipline in overriding limiting thoughts. Discipline is not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Fear comes and goes. Discipline remains. When your mind says, stay small, discipline responds, move anyway. Not aggressively, not violently, calmly. Discipline teaches the mind that action does not require permission. And with repetition, the mind learns a new rule. I don't have to feel ready to move. That realization is freedom. Part 33. Why self-respect is the antidote to mental limitation. Your mind keeps you small when it believes you don't deserve more. Self-respect rewrites that belief. Self-respect is built through behavior. By honoring your time, by choosing truth over comfort, by not abandoning yourself in difficult moments. As self-respect grows, the mind loses authority, because you no longer negotiate with thoughts that disrespect you. Part 34. The moment your mind stops controlling your life. This moment is subtle. There is no dramatic shift, no sudden confidence, just clarity. You notice fear, but you move anyway. You hear doubt, but you don't obey it. The mind becomes a companion, not a dictator. At this stage, you no longer feel small, not because you feel powerful, but because you feel grounded. Part 35. Why most people never experience this freedom. Most people wait to feel safe before they act. But safety is not a feeling. It is a skill. It is built through repeated exposure to discomfort. Those who never challenge their limits remain trapped inside their minds. Those who act with awareness gradually expand their inner world. Freedom is not given. It is practiced. Part 36. The final truth about why your mind tries to keep you small. Your mind is not your enemy. It is outdated. It learned rules in a different version of your life. Rules designed for survival, not fulfillment. When you understand this, you stop fighting your mind. You lead it. You thank it for its concern and move forward anyway. That is maturity. That is strength. If this story resonated with you, remember this. You were never meant to stay small. You were meant to grow consciously. And if you are using these stories to improve your English listening and comprehension, You are already investing in your future. Subscribe to English Rise for more calm, meaningful English stories that help you train your English while strengthening your mindset. See you in the next journey.